everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm here today to do a different sort of video for me, and I wanted to talk today about adaptations of books, and specifically in this case the adaptation of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. So this was adapted by Amazon Prime, and I just finished watching it last month. And I had a really positive experience with this adaptation. And I feel like people are often very divisive about such things, about whether or not you should stay true to the novel when you're taking it and making it into a different format. So when you're taking a novel and making it into TV or movie. And I felt like this series in particular really helped me to crystallize my feelings on that topic, and I really enjoyed having the world of the Wheel of Time series come back to life. So a little bit of backstory on that. You will probably, if you've watched any of my videos, you'll probably know I do not read a lot of fantasy. So the Wheel of Time series, which is, I believe, 13 or 14 books, is the only fantasy series that I've ever completed from start to finish. I haven't read, there is a prequel as well, which I have not read. Just so that we're clear on where I stand on this. Now, I started reading these books in the late 90s, and subsequently read them over the span of at least 10 years, maybe 12 years before I finished all of them. And I adored the characters in these books. So it wasn't just, a light series that I read without any investment in it. I was wholly invested in these characters. I adored them. I was with them for 13 or 14 books. And so when they had different experiences, when things were happening to them, they were effectually happening to me. I really, really loved those books. And there are questionable things around, the writing of them. They were written in a different time with a different philosophy about the world. But the one thing they did have, which I identified with immediately, was strong female characters. And being a female reader and not maybe reading a lot of fantasy novels, but having read a lot of novels in general and seen a lot of fantasy in other formats, I was so enthralled with the fact that these really strong female characters were part of the main crew. So if you're not familiar with the Wheel of Time series, it is epic beyond scale, and I'm sorry about the sirens. And it starts in a really small village called the Two Rivers, and it follows a group of 5 youth. 3 boys, Rand, Perrin, and Matt, and 2 girls/women, Egwene and Nynaeve. Now, Moraine is an Aes Sedai, and so Aes Sedais are these powerful women. So there's a whole group and faction of powerful women who are feared, they are revered, they are able to wield something called the One Power. They have different factions and different colors that they break into, and each faction has a different mission or a different way of being in the world. So the yellow faction are healers, for example, and the red faction seek out men who can channel the One Power, because the One Power has been tainted by the Dark One, so an evil entity. It is a very, very complex plot. There are a lot of subplots. There is a lot of layers of characters. And essentially, the Dragon Reborn is a character who is going to come and fight something they call the last battle. But what ends up happening is that we discover that these 5 characters, plus more characters that come in over the course of all these books, are all tied together. And so even though only one of them is the Dragon Reborn, all of them affect each other and are essentially part of a bigger picture of how this plot is going to unfold. So I absolutely adore these stories, to the point that when you reach the end, Robert Jordan, who was the author, actually passed away before he could complete his books, and so he passed them over to Brandon Sanderson, who I have not read any of his books, but he is a very lauded fantasy writer as well. And so Brandon Sanderson took his notes and understood what he wanted to do and finished the books for him. And when one of the main characters dies at the end, I actually sobbed. I was so upset about that death. So I'm setting all this up to say that I would consider myself a true fan of these books, and a true fan of the characters and the world that was built within them. Now, has my reading style changed since I read those books? Yes, it has. I still don't read a lot of fantasy. I have not really had the urge to reread the books because I do feel like the type of reading I do now is different from the reader I was when I read those books. And so I never had an urge to reread them because I thought, I love them. I love what they represented to me as I was growing up, basically. I think I started reading them when I was around 19. And so I feel like they were part of something for me that has moved through. And I just never thought that I would reread them. It's also a huge commitment. It's 13 or 14 books, everyone. That's a lot of books, right? And they're 1,000 pages, 800 pages each. They're really long. So when I saw that Amazon Prime had created a TV series based on the books, I was so curious because they are so complex. They're so long, like I just said, hundreds and hundreds of pages. Huge amount of characters, places. They travel over miles and miles, going to all these different types of places, meeting all these different types of people. I just was like, how will they bring it to life? How will they take these huge books and condense them down into something that will tell this story? And by the way, I have watched the Game of Thrones adaptation and also read the Game of Thrones books. And the reason I bring that up is because I always compared Game of Thrones books to the Wheel of Time books, and I never thought they were as good. So I don't know. I'm sorry if you really love the Game of Thrones books, but I didn't identify with the female characters in Game of Thrones the way I do in Wheel of Time. I think Robert Jordan was just better at writing empowered women than George R. R. Martin is. Sorry, George R. R. Martin. It was just how I felt when I read them. And to be honest with you, I know that apparently there's supposed to be more Game of Thrones books because he's never actually finished the series, and I won't read them. I feel very concluded in the story because the TV show is now over. And I don't have a desire to continue reading the books because they didn't move the same way. The Wheel of Time series is very, very different, very differently written with a really different focus. The stories are just, to me, so different that, and I much preferred Wheel of Time. So my first impressions when I started watching the TV show were that I thought the casting was really well done. Now, is the casting true to the ethnicities in the book? I don't know. And I don't really care, and I don't really want it to be. I think there's some things I think that when these adaptations are made, that people should make concessions for. And one of those things is to bring the story into, to make it more relatable for more people, to make it reflect the values and the current day sensibilities of modern viewers, and to present the world in a superior way. And so for me, to make the cast very diverse and representing different cultures, and make that a normal part of the way things were presented. I loved it very much. I think they made lots of different changes to certain traits, certain aspects of the characters at the beginning of the story, and they aged them up. They made them a bit older and more mature, and I think all those things have contributed to the show being, to the story being better. I have had enough distance from the books that I can't remember every single plot point. So when I was watching, I couldn't necessarily remember whether they were adding something or taking something away from every single detail. I did end up watching a series of videos where a more avid reader of the books compared the two and talked about the differences. And so if you're interested in watching those videos, I will link their channel down below so that you can have a look at those. I thought they were very well done and super interesting, even though my conclusion and her conclusion were not similar, because I think I appreciated a lot of the changes more than she did. What was so wonderful about watching this for me was seeing the world in a visualized way. So not just from the world that was in my head and how I imagined things to be, but seeing them brought to life in another rendering by a group of storytellers. And I was just so grateful to be back in that world, because I loved it so much and I loved the characters so much. And so despite the fact that some things were changed, I was still so thrilled to have the story being told again and to be engaging with the story and to see all the beautiful costumes, the different cultures that are represented in the stories. And I also kind of enjoyed the speeding up of the story, because it's a very long, as you can imagine, story to get through. Thousands of pages, many places, things taking a super long time, relationships taking a super long time. And so in a TV format, you have to speed all of that up. And it was actually really enjoyable for me to watch it in a more condensed way. And actually, what I have decided from all of this is that I think I'm going to try to listen to these books on audio again. I could start the books and decide that I am not interested in listening to them on audio. They are obviously super long audiobooks. But it was so enjoyable for me to watch the series and to be re-immersed in this world that I thought it would be fun to try to potentially listen to the books again and get, just be re-immersed in that world. And I think there's a little bit of nostalgia in it for me, but there's also just this sense of like really connecting with these characters and wanting their qualities to be around me again. And I know that's why people reread books, but I'm not a huge rereader. And so I am really surprised that I want to reread these. But I think the beauty of audiobooks for me is that I can listen you know, when I'm doing something else, and kind of be immersed in the world, but not have to, like, you know, slog through thousands of pages if that's just not what, I don't feel up for that. And there's so many other books that I want to read. So this was just a fun little video for me to share my overall impressions of The Wheel of Time. I'm sure there's many, many people who want these adaptations to be true to the novel, and I have definitely watched adaptations of books that I've read that I did not agree with the way that they did the adaptations. And I think that, you know, for every person, there's some fundamentals that make a story magic for them, and if they feel that that's been compromised in some way, they really can't forgive whoever is doing the adaptation, and that's fair enough. But for me, the Wheel of Time adaptation was pure enjoyment, and I really hope that if you have read the books, you will watch the adaptation and let me know what you think. And if you're into fantasy and you haven't read these, you know, give them a try. They are, to me, full of wonderful, rich characters that take you on a wonderful adventure. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video again really soon.